So to understand istikhara conceptually, what is Salatul Istikhara? So Salatul Istikhara, I can explain best to you what istikhara is by explaining to you what istikhara is not. You know, as they say in Arabic, تُعْرَفُ الْأَشْيَاءُ بِأَضْدَادِهَا. Sometimes the best way to get to know something is to know the opposite of it. So the best way I can help you understand what istikhara is conceptually, what's the role of istikhara, what's the purpose of istikhara, the concept, is by explaining to you what it is not, what it most definitely is not. And what I can tell you that istikhara is not a magic 8-ball. Everybody know what a magic 8-ball is? You ever buy that? They get it at the mall like a gag gift, right? So what happens with the magic 8-ball? Let's just think about that for a second. So you say, should I go to the mall today? Maybe, right? So that's a magic 8-ball, right? Basically, what I mean by saying that, by just giving a silly example, what I'm trying to explain is what people play around with when they play around with a magic 8-ball. What they're basically trying to do is, you know, they just throw up a random question, just shake the ball and get a magical answer. And boom, you just go with it, you roll with it. It's kind of like rolling the dice. Istikhara is not that. Istikhara, the way I can explain it to you, is that it is the third of a 3-step decision-making process. Istikhara is the third of a 3-step decision-making process. The first step of a decision-making process is to use the God-given intellect, ability, critical thinking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed each and every single human being with, in different capacities no less. But nevertheless, Allah has granted every single human being the ability to be able to take factors into consideration, weigh different options, think about it, ponder on it, you know, reflect on it, contemplate it, and process. That is the first step of a decision-making process in the life of a believer. That he first uses this aql, this intelligence, this ability to think that Allah has granted him. And there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes the aql, ulul albab, and these types of things in the Quran, because this is from the greatest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. So that's the first step of a decision-making process. Take your circumstances into consideration, look at the options available to you, and then sit down and think and try to figure out, do some research, and try to come to somewhat of a conclusion. At least try to narrow your options and come to somewhat of a conclusion and decision. That's number one. The second step of a decision-making process is istishara. It sounds kind of like it rhymes with istikhara. It's because it comes from the same verb pattern, which basically is the Arabic word for seeking counsel, seeking advice. Seeking counsel, seeking advice. Mashwara, right? It comes from that same word. So then the next step of the process is to then seek some counsel, seek some advice. And that really depends on what type of a decision you're trying to make. If you want to buy a car, so first you took a look at, did some research online, you maybe went a little car shopping, looked at a few cars, maybe test drove something, and you narrowed it down to about 3-4 different cars that you're thinking about. Then what you could do, for instance, is you go to the masjid and there's a brother at the masjid who's a car mechanic. Now what you do is you sit down with that brother and say, brother, I wanted some advice from you because you're experienced and knowledgeable about cars. What do you recommend? These are the 3-4 cars I'm looking at. What can you tell me? And he says, well, I wouldn't buy that. That has transmission problems. This car wears out really quickly, etc., etc. Now you're seeking counsel. You're seeking advice. If it's a more personal matter or a personal issue, something that is like a life type of decision, then you seek that counsel and that advice from somebody who sincerely and honestly cares about you. Somebody that is experienced and mature and maybe even spiritually focused, so that they have a well-rounded perspective that they can provide to you. So that's istishara, that's the seeking counsel, that's the second step of that decision-making process. The third and final step of that decision-making process is now istikhara. Now, what basically has occurred up to this point is you started off with no idea what to do. You narrowed it down to maybe a half a dozen different options. You then sought some counsel and got some advice from someone. Now you're down to your last couple of options. A few options, maybe just 2 options, whatever it is. At this point in time, and now you're just, you're kind of struggling with this or that. And you're starting to lean a little more towards one direction. You're starting to lean a little more towards one direction. So you're thinking about two cars, now you're starting to lean a little bit more towards buying a Camaro, for instance. Random example. I don't know where that came from. Now you're starting to lean in one direction, but you're kind of conflicted. You're just a little bit conflicted. You just need a little bit of a push. You need a little convincing. You're looking for that confidence to make your decision that you kind of have come to now through critical thinking. Apply your intellect, do some research. Number two, you sought some counsel. Now you're starting to lean in a direction, but you require some confidence. You need some clarity of mind and heart. That is where istikhara comes into play. And that right there, what I've just explained to you, removes many of the issues and questions that people have about istikhara itself. A lot of people are confused about istikhara because people try to use it like the magic 8-ball. I gotta buy a house, let me do istikhara. What do you think is gonna happen? Like, are you magically just gonna see a house like in your dreams, and then all of a sudden that's the house, then you go searching for it, and then you find it, and then you buy it? It doesn't work that way. You don't decide, I need to buy a car, we need an extra car in the house. And so I'm gonna do istikhara and a Honda Civic's gonna fall on me. So it doesn't work that way. That's not how, and when people try to utilize istikhara in that way, then they walk away confused. I made istikhara and I'm so confused. Sheikh, I made istikhara and I can't figure anything out. It's not working. It's not working. You don't change the batteries in your istikhara, right? What basically is going on is that you're not utilizing it properly. Anything that's not utilized properly, of course, it's not going to work right. So the thing is, you got to utilize it in the right way. You have to utilize it properly and appropriately. And that's the thing. So make sure that you turn it into the third of a 3-step decision-making process. That's the concept and the role of istikhara. What is required to do istikhara? What is required for the istikhara is what is required for any other prayer, which is you need to make sure that you are pure and clean. You need to make sure that you are clothed appropriately. You need to make sure that you have wudu. Obviously that falls under purity, but I just want to be explicit. Alright, so you are pure and clean. You do not require a bath of purification. You are dressed appropriately. You have wudu. You are facing towards the qibla. And that's what's required for istikhara. So basically whatever is required to pray, just normally pray, that is exactly what's required for istikhara. There are no other extra, absolutely no extra prerequisites or requirements for istikhara. Alright? You don't have to pray it immediately before you go to sleep. Don't have to. You don't have to take a shower and then immediately pray istikhara. No, you need wudu to pray, you need wudu for istikhara. Istikhara is a prayer. Just like dhuhr is a prayer. Just like nafil would be a prayer. Alright? So that's all you need. Anything extra that you might have ever heard, you might have ever come across, you might have assumed that is needed for istikhara, aside from what's required to pray. Wudu, dressed appropriately, obviously, you want to be clothed, that's common sense. Alright? Facing the qibla, Allahu Akbar, that's istikhara. That's it. The only thing I will add in here is that according to the opinion of the majority of the scholars, there are small differences of opinion. I'm basically going to go ahead and tell you what the majority of the scholars say, because in istikhara, in salat al-istikhara, there's not like some very like major differences of opinion. There's a few minor opinions here and there that differ from the vast majority. I'm just going to go ahead and share the majority opinion, because it's an overwhelmingly majority opinion. And the overwhelmingly majority opinion is the only thing you got to watch out for is, again, what you watch out for other prayers. And that is, make sure you don't pray istikhara at the times when prayer is forbidden.